Something I'm really curious about, Rem, is who would you say your top influences are?
My top influencers or influences?
Your top,
because influencers,
the people that have influenced you most.
People. Are you talking about people or like ideas or like movements or sources?
Let's do two separate people and then ideas.
People are harder because I hate people. That's not true. I like people a lot, but only few. I mean, I think just like I'll say like, you know, kind of ancient philosophers in the aggregate.
Okay.
Right. I mean, like,
is there a particular philosopher back then?
Oh, I mean, I'm a big Plato fan, right? I love Plato, you know, very Platonic. I used to be more Aristotelian. I've become more Platonic over the years. As I've gotten wiser maybe and less rigid. You know, I would say, you know, in a more, you know, let's go living. You want living or dead? Like dead or living or both? You know,
I don't think it matters. I don't think, like, what is death if they're still influencing people today?
Yeah, I would say it's domain specific, really. Right. I have people who have influenced me or thinkers who have influenced me in certain domains. Right. So it's like Jane Jacobs, who's a very famous 20th century urbanist.
Yes.
I find her tremendously influential. Right. The Death and Life of Great American Cities.
Right here.
Yes, The Death and Life of Great American Cities.
I got a bit to go yet.
See, like that. So I find her very influential. Like Taleb, you know, Anti-Fragile and Black Swan. I love him. I find him influential. I actually found Thomas Piketty's Capital to be very influential on me. Not in you know, I disagree with him and he was very influential. I think Karl Marx was very influential. You know, like I love classical thinkers, Marx, Smith, Peter Drucker, the business thinker, Edwards Deming, the business management thinker. I find them to be influential. You know, I think, you know, Edgar Schein, the organizational culture theorist, you know, it's like, you know, just, you know, there's thinkers whose ideas are kind of, I find to be systemic, you know, who employ a systems thinking approach. Those are the people I typically like.
So someone like Nietzsche is more of like an individualistic approach, right? Or
yeah, exactly. Okay. Like I like people who are like looking at how macroscopic, like not macroscopic, but macro cultural, macro political, macroeconomic phenomena are interlinked and influencing each other. Douglas North, who won a Nobel Prize in economics back in the 90s for his work on institutional economics, has been a big influence on me. You know, it's like, I'm sure there's several theologians. I actually find former Pope Benedict, before he was Pope, Joseph Ratzinger, as a philosopher, to be very influential on how I think in his work that combines the spiritual with the logical, which is very important to me. Yeah, I don't know. It's tough, right? Because as you know, I read a lot, like you do. I read a lot, and like,
you read a lot more than I do.
Yeah, I read more than anybody I know, but you know, you take bits and pieces from everything you read and you form your own ideas, right? And you know, and then they become original works. You know, and if you know like copyright law, right? I mean, if you create something original enough from prior art, it now becomes an original piece of art. So exactly. So I like to think that, you know, under US copyright law, all my ideas are actually my own. So
what about some of the ideas then?
Well,
yeah, you kind of talked about
like, what about like you're talking about intellectual movements, right? Like intellectual movements, right? You know, that are influential.
What? Okay.
Capitalism, of course, I love capitalism as like, but not as like a system, but as a theory, right? And there's a big difference. Like I love capitalism as an economic theory. Oh, Joseph Schumpeter. I love, as you know.
Yeah, you've mentioned him.
Oh yeah, I love Schumpeter. Hugely influential on me. He was a capitalist. He thought capitalism would kill itself, and he's being proven correct. So, you know, profit maybe, but yeah, I mean, Schumpeter, I take after Schumpeter in believing that capitalism is awesome, but also believing that it will eventually be a victim of its own success and die.
What's the most fascinating historic event?
Guy Debord. I mean, like, sorry. Now you got me going. So Guy Debord, who's a 20th century Marxist, like he's a socialist philosopher. He wrote Society of the Spectacle. Fantastic book, right? So like, even though like I'm this Republican capitalist, I find, Marxist thinking, kind of, more socialist thing. I find it fascinating. It's very interesting to me. I find many parts of it compelling, right? I'm not unreasonable. And that those things influence me too.
What historical event fascinates you the most?
Ooh, that's great. You mean from what perspective? Because I mean, like, I could obviously say like the life and death of Jesus Christ, which is like kind of trite and it's kind of a bromide. But
I mean, it's up to your interpretation of the question.
I mean, like the life and death of Jesus Christ, just because like of how much has affected Western civilization, right?
Mhm.
Like the life and death of Jesus fundamentally altered the course of human history.
Yeah.
And there's like many, almost everything that happened after, at least in the West, can be traced back to the life and death of Jesus. So like that interests me, just, aside from the theological component, just the historical component is very interesting to me.
Because
So,
you also, for listeners that might not know this, you studied theology. You got a master's in theology.
yes, that is correct. So for better or worse.